In 1990, 31-year-old John O'Brien was a landscaper in a town just outside of Chicago, Illinois. In January of that year, he and his friend David decided to book a trip to the very sunny Caribbean islands of Trinidad and Tobago. They left for their trip just a couple of days later, and the hotel they were staying in was right near the airport in Trinidad. The day before, they were supposed to fly back to Chicago. John began complaining of some unnamed health issue, which has not been made public, so we don't know what it is. He went to some drugstore in town to look for a specific medication, but nobody had this medication. But eventually, David decided that John was okay enough that they did not need to call a hospital, and the two men decided to just go to bed. But about an hour to maybe an hour and a half after David had fallen asleep, he wakes up to some man standing next to his bed, choking him, and he manages to push them off of him, and then this guy grabs the lamp next to him and smashes David with it, and this guy jumps on top of him, and the two men are fighting, but eventually David manages to overpower this guy and he kicks him off. He realizes this guy is John, and John is completely naked, and John just runs out of the hotel room. He ends up running down the hall, he goes down the stairs, he runs past the front desk, out the front doors of the hotel, and just takes off running. And so John runs for several minutes until he reaches the airport. Between him and the main building of this airport is this huge concrete wall, but John runs up to this wall and manages to climb up and over the wall. And where he landed on the other side was right next to this security guard shack. The 4 security guards that are in this shack, they charge out to apprehend him, but he managed to overpower all 4 of them, and he stole their 4-wheel drive vehicle, and he heads out onto the tarmac. There were several planes that were moving into position for takeoff. One of those planes was this huge British Airways jet airliner passenger plane that was actually the next to take off, and John just drives directly into this plane. But the vehicle he was driving, it was not tall enough to actually strike the main body of this plane. He basically got wedged underneath one of the wings. The security guards would see John, he stands up, and John reaches up and starts rubbing his hand on the underside of the plane, which had been damaged from running into it. And there was oil leaking off, and John began rubbing this oil around and then dabbing it into his big wound on his shoulder. John leapt out of the wrecked 4-wheel drive vehicle and then just took off running. They managed to lose sight of John when all of a sudden somebody notices John about 300 feet away on the other side of the plane. He comes out from behind a building, and when he reaches the plane, he stops for a second, looks up at the engine of this airplane that's still spinning, and John jumps into the engine, and instantaneously John ceases to exist. No one knows for sure what actually caused John's rampage, although it's assumed it had to do with whatever this unnamed health issue was. Ultimately, his death was ruled a